Hello, in this video we're going to get introduced to constraint layout. Constraint layout is a very common layout to the extent that when you create a new project of Android, the default layout that they give you in your project is a constraint layout. It is popular and simple and common to use. If you're new to Android, a layout is a container that we use to organize our elements or our views. For example, if you have a container, a main container, you can put there different views, and all the views that we can possibly use in Android, they are arranged in this point. They are grouped into common views, text views, buttons, and other views. This video is not purposely for different types of views, and we shall make another video that talks about different types of views. This moment we are going to talk about the constraint layout. But the main point is that a layout is the container that we shall use to organize different views or different elements of Android user interface. So the constraint layout, it was designed to make things simple and not to make the project complex like other kind of layout. For example, a constraint layout, we shall use it depending on conditions, so that we put any layout inside the constraint layout and you can use it to relate to any end. But if you compare it with other layouts such as linear layouts, you'll find that other linear layout, you just compare it with a container that is containing inside. But this one, it can be used to be compared to any point of the Android user interface. So with that much said, let me first take you to the code and you see how this constraint layout is. So if you're new here to Android, no problem. So if you want to see the code of this project, you simply click here. You see, here we have the code, here we have the split, and then you have the design. So if you click here, right now we're in the design mode. So if you click here, we shall be able to see the code. So you'll see this is the constraint layout. So from this one is where we got the design that we were having before. Now if I click on split, I'll be able to see the design at the same time, the code. So if I make any change here, I can see it being generated with its respective code inside my source code here. If I click here, it will be only the design that will be able to do to preview. So that's a simple way. So the main point is that the constraint layout is created using this open tag and then ended with with this kind of open tag, just like the one that opened it before. So I'll go back to the design, and at this moment you will be able to see that this constraint layout will have attributes on this right hand side, and these attributes are different things that you can use to change or to set the rules that should govern this constraint layout. It is very simple to the way that we can use drag and drop to use its elements. For example, I'm going to come here to buttons, or okay, buttons or text, any of them. I'm going to come to buttons, then I'm going to drag and drop here a button. So it means that I've created a button inside my constraint layout. But if with that other layout, it could be hard for us to use drag and drop. So it is simple, that's why we use button. That's why it is common. So it means that the code of this button has been generated to the other side. So if you come back to the code, to the source code, you can see we do not have this part of the code, but has been generated because we were able to do because we did because we introduced a button in this constraint layout. So let us look at different reasons why we need the constraint layout. First of all, if I click here on the button, I'll be able to see the different attributes that I can make on the button. Among the attributes that I can make, we have the ID of this button is called button 9, but I can change it. For example, I can make it button 1 because I have a single button at this moment. So I can make it button 1, but it's not necessary. And we have other attributes which are related to this button. For example, attributes which are declared, such as the parent and the rest. We have the attributes which we have already used, which are called declared. So we have attributes that are related to the layout, how it should be, this button should be related to the margins of this constraint layout. We have other attributes such as which are grouped, and these are called common attributes that we always use all the time, the on click and other, such as changing the text that is inside this button. I'll collapse this one and I'll come here to other attributes, all attributes that you can possibly use on this button. So we shall look at these attributes, some of them you look for them by yourself, but this is the main point, that you can change even the color of this particular attribute or with this particular button. So let's go back to the main point, which is the constraint layout. So if we come back to our source code, I'll click here so that I can be able to see the design and the source code. I'll see that our button is here and is having the ID. So the ID that we changed, remember we changed to a button 1, you can be able to see it at this point. So it will have the text here. Now here we can see it have the constraints. Let me try to remove these constraints so that we should understand one by one. So if I remove the constraint, you see the button will collapse here, will be collapsed in the middle. But if I move this button here in the middle, but remember I did not relate this button to anything, and you'll see some constraints that will be generated here. They are called layout editor absolute. Layout editor absolute. This layout editor absolute means that this one is just used for the view, for your sake of previewing when you're editing, but it has no any effect when the Android app is in action. Also this one absolute Y, so we just use it to do what, to present the button position, but it has no any effect on the button itself. That's why we call them layout absolute. Now I'm going to run this program or this Android app so that we can be able to see what we have made so far. So I'll click here on run, and then we see what is going to be presented on on our app. So as you can see, when we're designing your design, we could see that our button is in the middle, but in the real app, in the emulator, you can see the button has collapsed and come here at the very end of everything, like it has no any condition or relationship with that is governing it to be in a certain position. That's why it come here at the very beginning. Yet when we're designing, we're able to see that it is in the middle, but when we put it on a real device, you see it is in here at the beginning. It has collapsed. The reason is because this editor absolute layout, we just use them to display. It does not relate to anything like being implemented in the real app. This is just to be displayed in the editor. So I hope you've got the point of that editor absolute X. Now, what are the constraints? Now, the constraints is the ability for us to relate the edge or the element that we have inside our view to our to the parent. So for example, here in this video, we're just going to concentrate on the parent layout. So on the parent layout is the layout, this main constraint layout that is containing this view or this button is what we call a parent layout. So I'm going to remove all these, and I'm going to start adding constraints. Before we did not have any constraint. So to add a constraint, I can say that this top edge is going to be related to this parent border. So I'm going to see so what we should do is we should just observe our code and see what is going to happen. So because this time is just for introduction for the beginners, but once we finish this time, then the remaining days we shall be writing the code. We shall not be writing using the user interface. So the point is, you're going to see what is going to happen when I'm going to put a first constraint. A constraint means a condition, so I'm going to put the first condition. So I'm going to say that this top part of this button is going to be related to the parent, to this top order. So to do that, I'll simply click here and then drag and drop and put this edge here. So if you can observe, we have got this one attribute that has been added to our code, which is the layout constraint top to top of. So here top to top of, and then I specify parent. So it means that this layer, I mean this this button is going on its top, it's going to be related to the what, to the to its parent. So any condition that you shall give to this top, for example margin, is going to be referred to the parent that is containing it. So if I move, you see I'm moving, and you're going to see what's going to change in our code. So if I move the button, for example, up to that point, I'll be able to see that we are having margin top. You can see margin top 192 dp. So that one has been introduced because we did what, we put the constraint that this one should be related to our parent from top. So I can also do the same, that it should be related to our parent from bottom by simply putting this one. So when you make it related to our parent from bottom, you can see the margin has disappeared. Why? Because we are using now the ratio. So it is going to be related from both heading, I mean from the both top and bottom. So the margin itself has disappeared because it's now going to be a ratio. Now if I remove this one again, let me remove it. You remove it by simply clicking here. How do I remove it though? Okay, you remove it from this side, just click here. It can't be removed. Okay, I'm going to remove it manually. The point is I'm going to remove this bottom one. So you can see here it is this one that was introduced. What was it? Constraint top of bottom. So if I remove the, I mean this one is the one that is it was introduced when you put the the constraint of bottom. You can see these other constraints have also been put. Have also been put. So I'm going to remove this one on bottom so that we can see what's going to change. So if I remove this one of bottom, constraint bottom of bottom, so if I remove it, it means that there's no relationship with the bottom. And then you see if I try to move, let me try to remove also the one of end and the one of what, of start, so that we can have only that one of top. So if I move my mouse, I mean if I move the button from top, you can see we are having in according to size. So it means that this one will be specific size, it should not be in a ratio. But if I make another relationship on the bottom, then it means that it's going to be a what, to a ratio. You can see that one in the middle has gone. So if I move this one here like on top, then you can see the reason why I don't want this other left and bottom to appear. So if I move this one in the middle, they always come. Okay, if I move them in the middle, you can see that we're having this one, what we call a bias. But before we come to bias, let me first just leave this one to top and bottom, and then we run our project and we see how it's going to look like just without using the bias. So if we don't use the bias, you can see again we have the what, the absolute x-axis. So I mean that on the x-axis we have not specified what, we have not specified our constraints. That's why we're having the absolute x-axis. And you saw that all the editor absolute will not affect anything in our what, in our project. So when we run this code, we should expect this button to collapse here or to collapse on this side. Why? Because on the x-axis we have not done what, we have not specified the constraints. So let me try to run it and we see what's going to happen. So you can see what has happened. Because it did not specify the x-axis constraints, that's why you see the y-axis constraint have been specified, but the x-axis constraints, they were not specified. That's why it is in the middle of y-axis, but the x-axis has collapsed. Here it is here in the middle because here the what, the absolute. So that's what is meant by what, by the constraint layout. I mean by the vertical or the y-axis constraints. And this one we are relating them only to the what, to the parent. So what I'm going to do is that if I move, I'm going to put the y-axis. So I've put only one for the y-axis. So I mean that if I move this one here without specifying, this one will be specified. The margin will be specified in form of what? In form of dp. You can see here margin start is what, is in specific size, which is dp. But if I move this one also another constraint, if I put another constraint, which one is this one, which this constraint down that has been introduced, constraint end of parent, end of end of parent. So it means that this constraint is going to be related to the what? To the parent. Now it's going to be in form of ratio. And how do we know? We know using the what we call a bias. A bias is a ratio that we use to represent the position of a what? Of a view according to its constraints. For example, if I move this view here on top, you're going to see the vertical bias is going to change. This vertical bias is going to change to 1.5. So it means that from here up to the end, the bias is 1. So we use the 0 point something to do what? To differentiate or to position the bias. For example, if I want it to be in the middle, it means that I'll have to use 0.5. So if I change this one, the vertical bias, to 5, you'll see it will be in the middle. If I change to 0.2, you'll see it will be here on top. That's what we call the bias. So you have the vertical bias and the horizontal bias. The vertical bias is the one that is related to the y-axis, okay, to the y-axis, and the horizontal bias is the one that is related to the what? To the left axis. And these biases, they work only when you have put the constraint from the what? On all sides of a layout. So for example, if I want here this button to be here around here, so I can put here the vertical layout to be 8, and if I also put here the horizontal layout to be also 8, then it means that it will be the ratio of 8 to 8, and we shall have our button on that position. So it means that it will always be relative to that position, even though we change our mobile phone and put it in a what? In a portrait, in a landscape view, you'll see it is just taking the space, that position that we put. That is why this constraint layout is very important, because it is responsive. Others sometimes even call it responsive layout. But if we specify the specific pixels or the specific space that a layout should be from a certain end to another end, so it means that it will not be responsive, it will be specific. But if we put a ratio like this one, the one I've shown you, the vertical bias and the horizontal bias, it means that this one will always be responsive according to the device. You see, we are using the ratios, so that's why it is very powerful and mostly used. Let me turn back the mobile phone to portrait, and then you see to take back to the to the same position that we expect it to be. Let us run this code and see how it's going to appear in the Android phone. Perfect. We can see our button is in a position that where we're expecting it to be. And even though we change our mobile phone, maybe we change it to landscape, you can see still the button is responsive in a position that we expect it to be. It's not that it is in a specific position that where we don't want it to be, because it is really responsive. So we have seen how this constraint layout is responsive, because it is using what? It is using ratios. So in this video we shall stop from here. Let us watch the next video where we're going to learn more deep about the constraint layout. I hope you won't miss. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure that you do so. Subscribe to my channel and don't miss the next video where we're going to look at another part of the constraint layout. Thank you for watching.